Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
First, though, the big political news of this weekend. After months of tension with his party's leadership, Douglas Carswell, UKIP's only MP, is quitting to go independent. He put out a statement yesterday saying that he was leaving the party amicably and that with Brexit in the bag, there was no reason to stick with UKIP. Well, we're joined in the studio now by the former UKIP leader, Nigel Farage. Hello, thank you for being with us. So, you've dedicated your life to UKIP. You've travelled around the country trying to win elections for them. And this weekend, the party's only MP has quit.
Thank God.
You must be gutted, mustn't you?
Thank God. Now, look, he's been working against us for a very long time. Sadly, too many in UKIP were prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt. I wanted to kick him out back in 2015 for being disloyal, for working against us. But the good thing is, we've got a new leader, and the last thing he wants is somebody causing division. Every time there's a conference, we had problems with Carswell. And I think for Paul Nuttall, this is very good news.
At the same time, though, you've tried to be elected 7 times and you've lost. Paul Nuttall's tried to get elected 5 times and he's lost. Shouldn't you be trying to take notes from Douglas Carswell, who's actually managed to win for UKIP?
He has got the most Eurosceptic constituency in the country. Out of all 650 seats, Clacton is the seat where UKIP can win. Now, look, he joined us in 2014. We won that by-election, we won another by-election, and it was a great thing for the party at the time, but it didn't last very long because he never ever believed in the principles that UKIP stood for.
So do you think he's a Conservative infiltrator then?
Well, that was how it turned out, yes. But, I mean, look, this is a guy who always sells himself as being very honourable and different to everybody else. And one of his big crusades in Parliament has been recall, real recall, where he himself has said if 20% of the constituents want a by-election, they should have one. So what we're going to do, we'll test how honourable he is. We're going to write through the Electoral Reform Society to every house in Clacton and ask people whether they want him, as he's moved, to stand for a by-election. And perhaps then we'll find out who the real Douglas Carswell is.
So in that case, then, are you going to put your money where your mouth is? Would you stand in Clacton? Or
no.
What about South Thanet, if they rerun that?
Well, let's see. Let's see. I mean, let's see what happens. This is all in the hands of the Crown Prosecution Service. I can't odds what's going to happen there.
But if they do decide to rerun that election, would you stand?
Probably. And I haven't really made my mind up. Probably. But look, you know, the really big story of the week isn't Douglas Carswell, it's Article 50. It's happening on Wednesday, and we will then have passed the point of no return. We are leaving the European Union, but the point about UKIP is, what terms are we going to leave the European Union under? I mean, just today in the Sunday Times, there's talk that maybe children living in Warsaw will continue to qualify for child benefit. Yes, we're leaving, but UKIP's role, I think now, is to make sure we do it on the right terms.
You're setting out the mission statement of UKIP after Article 50 has been triggered. But of course, it's going to be quite difficult for your party, isn't it? Let's be honest. I mean, that's what Douglas Carswell is saying. UKIP's won the victory, so what's the point in sticking around? And it's no wonder, really, that you decided to leave as leadership as well.
Winning a war is very, very important, but also you have to win the peace. The peace is far from won. Already I can see with this government concessions being made over fishing, the desire of the Prime Minister to say part of the European arrest warrant. You know, this is not over by a long shot.
But you've got no MPs now. UKIP has got
no
MPs.
Do you know what? With no MPs, we forced a referendum in this country. In many ways, outside Parliament, UKIP's achievement has been astonishing.
I'm keen to talk as well about the tragic attack in London that happened this week, the Westminster terror attacks, where 4 people were killed, including a policeman trying to guard Parliament. Now, in the aftermath of that attack, you took to the American airwaves before much information had come out, and I just want to have a look at what you did say. If you open your door to uncontrolled immigration from Middle Eastern countries, you are inviting in terrorism.
Well, that's right, isn't it?
But it's not relevant to the terror attack, is it?
Five of the 8 people who committed that barbarity in Paris had come in across the Mediterranean.
But we're not talking about the barbarity.
The person who drove.
Farage, with respect, we're not talking about the barbarity in Paris.
I know. Actually,
you were talking about the.
Actually, as it turned out, well, the fact that it's homegrown terrorism is even worse. The fact is, this guy was radicalised inside a prison. You know, Theresa May was Home Secretary for 6 years. I'd like to know why People are being radicalised inside schools and prisons. Surely that's something we can prevent.
See, I absolutely accept that that is a huge issue, radicalisation. But I do just want to go back to the specifics, because you were talking about uncontrolled immigration.
Yes, I was.
Just admit you got it wrong. You're supposed to
Wrong?
be straight talking about
Goodness
people.
gracious me.
Because
just have a look. I was talking about terror attacks in Europe, and I said we did not know what the cause of this attack was. I was absolutely clear and specific. However, now that the deal with Turkey is clearly breaking down, very bad relations between, the Netherlands and Turkey, Europe now faces, perhaps an even bigger migrant tide this summer than it's had before, and it has no way of protecting itself against terrorists coming in. That is a very real issue. And actually, I think it's one of the reasons we voted for Brexit. You
see, again, you're talking about your views on immigration, which I respect.
No,
I understand.
They're facts.
They're facts. I understand your position on immigration, but what I'm trying to get to is the link between that immigration and what happened, the devastating attack that happened in Westminster. This was a man who was a 52-year-old from Kent, like yourself.
Yeah,
he was born in the UK.
I agree with you. This is worse. This is even worse. The fact that people are being radicalised inside our prisons, and we appear, over the last few years, to have done nothing about it. So we've got two problems. But given we already have a problem, with people being radicalised at home, why on earth would you want to add to it with an irresponsible immigration policy?
You see, that is a different point, though, isn't it? You are conflating.
I think your researchers have made a slight mistake. I was very specific when I talked about jihadism across the whole of Europe, and I repeat the point. As we have a homemade problem already, let's never add to it.
So you admit, then, that immigration had nothing to do with this terror attack?
Not directly, no. But that's not the point, is it? The point is there are lots of terror attacks taking place all across Europe, and many of them are people who've literally just arrived. Now, that's a bigger problem for France and Belgium than it is for us, because we're not part of the Schengen zone, thank goodness. We're leaving the European Union, even better, but we still have to be on our guard.
So will you apologise then for appearing to suggest
No.
that there is a link between uncontrolled immigration and what happened in Westminster?
No, absolutely not.
No.
Of course not.
So what are you exactly saying then, if we're talking again about people who are effectively homegrown terrorists, people who are in the UK, who are British, you're talking about issues with the Muslim community. What do you want to actually see happen now?
Well, two things, really. Firstly, people should not be radicalised inside state-run institutions and state-funded institutions, namely schools and prisons. And beyond that, well, clearly there is the biggest divide is the divide within the Muslim community. The vast, vast majority of Muslim people in Britain want to be integrated, want to be part of our culture, want their kids to play in the street with other kids, and yet, there is this very dangerous minority who have got a very dangerous interpretation of what the latter parts of the Quran mean. And I would like to see, actually, the Muslim community very openly having a discussion about Islam and what it means in the 21st century.
But this is already happening, isn't it? You are seeing Muslim leaders coming out.
Some.
You're seeing a lot of Muslim leaders coming out and condemning it. And also the other point as well is that this is someone who is a convert to Islam. He's not someone who's brought up as Muslim, which again is a really common factor within many people who go to extremist beliefs.
Listen, the other way people can be radicalised, of course, is through the internet, and that's an even more difficult job, I accept, for the government to deal with. I just think that the Muslim community need to have an open, honest debate about what's going on. For leaders to stand up and say that what this man did, actually, he wasn't really a Muslim at all, that doesn't wash. There needs to be a more honest, open debate about it.
Speaking about an honest debate, that's why it's important, isn't it, not to conflate immigration with what happened in Westminster?
No, look, open-door immigration across the Mediterranean has led directly to terrorist atrocities in Europe, and goodness knows
but not in Britain. There hasn't been in
hundreds
years,
and hundreds of British people,
British-born people committing terrorism.
Well, hundreds of British people have been to fight in Syria, and many of them have come back. I'd rather we didn't accept them back.
Okay. Now, on our last show, where you came on, you talked about President Trump, and you said that his historically poor poll ratings were a great place to start because it could only go up from there. Now, in that time, his poll ratings have slipped. He's failed to get through his flagship healthcare reforms, even to convince his own party that they were a good idea.
Yes.
And he was also been investigated by the FBI for allegedly colluding with Russia Doesn't sound great, does it?
No, I mean, he has a problem, of course he does, that the entire Washington establishment does not want radical change of any kind at all, and Trump and his administration want to shake things up, want to slim things down, and yeah, he's got a big battle against the Washington establishment. I'm very struck that with him failing at this stage to get the health reforms through Congress, all that actually does is strengthen his support with his key voters in the country, because that message, hey, I'm on your side against the establishment, rings true.
Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it, certainly. Nigel Farage, thank you for your time today.
Now, UKIP has lost its only MP, Douglas Carswell. He defected to UKIP from the Conservative Party almost 3 years ago, but yesterday announced he was quitting to sit as an independent. His surprise defection came in August 2014, saying only UKIP can shake up that little cosy clique called Westminster. But his bromance with Nigel Farage turned sour when Mr Carswell criticised the so-called shock and awful strategy as mean-spirited and wrong. Then, during the EU referendum campaign last year, Nigel Farage was part of the unofficial Leave.eu campaign, whereas Douglas Carswell opted to support the official Vote Leave campaign. Just last month, former UKIP leader Nigel Farage accused Douglas Carswell of thwarting his chances of being awarded a knighthood, writing that the time for him to go is now. Announcing his resignation on his website yesterday, Mr Carswell said, I desperately wanted us to leave the EU. Now we can be certain that's going to happen. I've decided I'll be leaving UKIP. When Mr Carswell left the Conservative Party in 2014, he resigned as an MP, triggering a by-election. I must seek permission from my boss, he said, referring to the people of Clacton. This time, though, Mr Carswell has said there will be no by-election. We're joined from Salford now by UKIP leader Paul Nuttall. Paul Nuttall, welcome back to the programme.
Morning.
Are you happy to see the back of your only MP?
Well, do you know, Andrew, I'm always sad when people leave UKIP, whether that's at a grassroots level or indeed whether it's at a parliamentary level. But, you know, I'm sad, but I'm not surprised by this. There's been a drift between Douglas and UKIP over the past couple of years. His relationship with Nigel Farage and certainly hasn't helped, and it's sort of a hangover from the former regime which I inherited. I tried to bring the party together. I thought I'd done that for a few months, but it seems now as if I was only papering over the cracks. Yeah. And Douglas is gone, and we will move on, and I think we can be a more unified party as a result.
Did Mr Carswell jump, as Nigel Farage has claimed, because he expected to be pushed at your National Executive Committee tomorrow?
Well, Douglas was coming before the National Executive Committee to answer a series of questions regarding issues that have come to the fore over the past couple of months. Of course, there was the whole knighthood issue. There's been the issue surrounding the Thanet election, and of course his comments in a book which came out regarding Brexit.
So he was under suspicion?
Well, he was coming to answer these questions, and they would have been difficult questions which the NEC put forward. So
he did jump, in your view?
Well, no. I'm not saying that the NEC would have thrown Douglas Carswell out of the party tomorrow, but he would have faced some very difficult questions. But what is clear is that a fissure has developed between UKIP and Douglas Carswell over the past couple of months, and I'm not surprised by him leaving the party yesterday.
All right, so you've lost Mr Carswell,
yeah,
Diane James,
yeah,
Stephen Wolfe, Aaron Banks. You failed to win the Stoke by-election. Mr Farage is now a pundit on US TV. UKIP really now stands for the UK Irrelevance Party, doesn't it?
Well, an opinion poll 2 days ago had us on 12%. Membership continues to rise. We've got
You've been on more than 12.
Oh, we have been on more than 12.
You're just kind of irrelevant now, aren't you?
Well, at 12, well, you know, if 1 in 10 of the population are prepared to vote UKIP, and let's not forget in 2015, 4 million people went out and voted UKIP. Yes, you know, we've been through a difficult period, but over the summer, exciting things are going to be happening within the party. We're going to rewrite the constitution. We're going to restructure the party. The party will have a new feel to it, and we'll be launching pretty much the post-Brexit UKIP at Torquay in our conference in September.
Aaron Banks, who used to pay quite a lot of your bills, he says that the current leadership, that would be you, couldn't knock the skin off a rice pudding. That's just another way of saying you're irrelevant, isn't it?
I don't think that's quite fair, to be honest with you. I mean, I've only been in the job since November the 28th. We've taken steps to restructure the party already. The party is on a sound financial footing. We're not going to have a problem money-wise going forward. You know, this is a party which now can really unify, can look forward to the post-Brexit era. Tomorrow, we're launching our sixth Brexit test for the Prime Minister, and UKIP has got to be the guard dog of Brexit, because let's not forget, if it wasn't for UKIP, there wouldn't have been a referendum, and we certainly wouldn't have Brexit.
Of course, every time you say you're going to unify, someone else leaves. Can you just clarify this for me? Is Aaron Banks still a member?
No, Aaron isn't a member of UKIP at this present moment in time. He's been a generous donor in the past. He's done a great job ensuring that we get Brexit, and I'm very thankful for that. But Aaron isn't a member of UKIP at this present moment in time.
All right. He's just submitted an invoice for £200,000 for the use of call centres.
Yeah.
Are you going to pay that?
No.
You're not?
No.
All right, that should be interesting to watch. On this, in the aftermath of the Westminster attack, Nigel Farage told Fox News that it vindicated Mr. Trump's extreme vetting of migrants. Now, since the attacker was born in Kent, like Nigel Farage was born in Kent, can you explain the relevance of that remark?
Well, look, I mean, I personally haven't supported Donald Trump's position on this, but what I will say, and this is what Nigel has said as well, you know, we have a problem within the Muslim community. It's, you know, a small number of people who hate the way we live.
Can you explain the relevance of Mr. Farage's remark, was my question.
Well, Mr. Farage also made the point about multiculturalism being a problem as well, and he is absolutely correct on that point, because we can't have separate communities living separate lives and never integrating, because that leads to radicalism.
How would extreme vetting of migrants help you track down a man who was born in Kent?
In this case, it wouldn't.
So why make the point to Fox News is my question.
Maybe in other cases it would. But as I say, I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump's position on extreme vetting. Never have been.
Okay.
So I'm probably the wrong person to be asking this question to, Andrew.
Okay, well, I think that's probably become clear in my efforts to get you to answer it. Let me ask you this. Should there be a by-election in Clacton now?
Well, Douglas has called by-elections in the past when he has left a political party. I know that there's certain people within UKIP who are keen to go down this line. I mean, Douglas is always very keen on recall, and if 20% of people within his constituency want a by-election, then maybe he should go ahead and we should have one. UKIP will be opening nominations for Clacton very soon.
All right. Hold on with us, Mr. Nuttall. I've got Douglas Carswell here in the studio. Why not call a by-election now?
Well, I'm not switching parties.
You're coming independent.
There's a profound difference. I'm not submitting myself to the authority, to the whip of a new party. If I was doing so, then quite rightly, as I did previously, I would feel obliged to trigger a by-election. Look at it this way. If every time an MP in the House of Commons either resigned the whip or lost the whip, far from actually strengthening the democracy against the party bosses, that would actually give those who ran parties enormous power. So I'm being absolutely consistent here. I'm not joining a party. I'm not crossing the floor.
All right.
So I don't need to call about it.
It is a change of status, and Nigel Farage has just said that he's going to write to every constituent in Clacton, and he wants to try and get 20% of constituents to hold a by-election. We're going to test him, he says. Write to every house in Clacton and find out if his constituents want a by-election. If 20% do, we'll find out if Mr. Carswell is honourable. What do you say?
I'm sure they'll be delighted to hear from Nigel, and I'm sure...
What's the answer to the question?
You know, there have been several by-elections where Nigel's had the opportunity to contact the electorate, and those didn't always go according to plan.
But if you did get 20%, would you?
No, I yesterday sent an email to nearly 20,000 constituents. I've had a huge number of responses back, all but a handful overwhelmingly supportive.
Less than a month ago, you told the Press Association you were 100% UKIP. 100%. Now you're 0%. What happened?
I saw Theresa May triggering Article 50, and we've won, Andrew.
You knew that a month ago she was going to trigger Article 50.
Well, we couldn't be certain. I thought on June the 24th I had serious thoughts about making the move.
But a month ago we knew Article 50 was going to be triggered.
I wanted to be absolutely certain that Article 50 would be triggered, and I think it's right. You know, this is why ultimately UKIP exists, in order to get us out of the European Union. We should be cheerful. Rather than attacking one another, we should be celebrating. This is our moment. We made it happen. Why all the gloom?
Did you try to sideline the former UKIP leader during the referendum campaign?
Not at all. I've been very open about this, the idea that I was involved in some sort of subterfuge. I made it very clear when I joined UKIP.
Well, you tried to sideline them openly rather than by subterfuge.
I always made the point that we needed to be optimistic, we needed to be inclusive, we needed to be broad, and we needed to be progressive to win.
And you
that's
didn't
why
think
we won.
he was?
I made it very clear, both in my acceptance speech in Clacton and when I said that Vote Leave should get designation, that the only way Euroscepticism could win would be by being more than just angry nativist.
Paul Nuttall, what do you make of that?
Well, do you know, I am happy. I'm over the moon that we've achieved Brexit. Unlike Douglas, I don't really have that much confidence in Theresa May because history proves that she's always been very good at talking the talk, but when it comes to walking the walk, she always tends to fail. And I'm just disappointed because I wanted Douglas to be part of the post-Brexit UKIP where we would move forward with a raft of domestic policies and we could go on and take seats at Westminster.
Do you think he tried to sideline Mr Farage during the referendum campaign?
Vote Leave certainly didn't want Nigel Farage front of house. We know that. They freely admit that and admitted it on the media over the past year. Look, you know, Nigel still was front of house because he is Nigel Farage, and you know, if it wasn't for Nigel, as I said earlier, we wouldn't have had the referendum and we wouldn't have achieved Brexit because Nigel Farage appeals, like UKIP, to a certain section of the population.
If our primary motive as politicians is to get us out of the European Union, why are we having this row in the first place? Why can't we all just celebrate what's happening on Wednesday?
Well, we can, Douglas, but as I say, you're far more confident that Theresa May will deliver on this than I am. But beyond that, as I say, you know, UKIP may well have been a single-issue pressure group 10 years ago. It wasn't a single-issue pressure group that you joined back in 2014. It wasn't a single-issue pressure group that you stood for in 2015 at the general election. And I'm very disappointed that you've now left us when we're about to move on into a new exciting era.
What specifically gives you a lack of confidence in Mrs May's ability to deliver?
Her record as Home Secretary. I mean, this is the Home Secretary who said she was going to deal with radical Islam. Nothing happened. This is the Home Secretary who said that she was going to get immigration down to the tens of thousands. Well, last year, in her last year as Home Secretary, a city the size of Newcastle came to this country. That isn't the tens of thousands.
I think we need to take yes for an answer eventually. I mean, some of the problem with some of the Eurosceptics is they never accept that actually they've won the argument. We've won. Theresa May is going to do what we've always wanted her to do. Let's be happy. Let's celebrate that.
No, Douglas, but let's just wait till she starts bartering things away. Let's wait till she betrays our fishermen, just as other Conservative Prime Ministers have done in the past. Let's just wait until we end up still paying some form of membership fee into the European Union or some large divorce bill. That isn't what people voted for on June the 23rd. And if you want to align yourself with that, then I'm sorry, you're not a UKIPper then, in my opinion.
So for UKIP to have any relevance, it all has to go wrong.
Well, I'm confident that she will start to barter things away and then politics will come back onto our turf. But beyond that, there will be a post-Brexit UKIP which will stand up for our veterans, which will stand for controlling and cutting immigration, slashing a foreign aid bill and becoming the party of law and order.
All right. Just finally, to you, Douglas Carswell. You say you have confidence in Mrs May to deliver in a way that Paul Nuttall doesn't. You've backed her. You were a Conservative. You believe that the Brexit will be delivered under a Conservative government. Why would you not fight the 2020 election as a Conservative?
To be honest, I feel pretty comfortable being independent. If you join a party, you've got to agree to a whole bunch of stuff that, frankly, I wouldn't want to agree with. I'm very comfortable being independent. I think fundamentally, politics is
so you'll fight 2020 as an independent?
Big changes coming to politics. If you look at what CrowdPack is doing for the raising of funds, if you look at what Vote Leave did in creating a pop-up party...
I've only got 5 seconds. Will you fight as an independent come the next general election?
Let's wait and see.
Very well. OK, Douglas Carswell, Paul Nuttall, thank you very much.